The winds are shifting hourly around the ongoing saga of St. Michael's Media and Church Militant. Joe Gallagher is not able to come on the show tonight, so to spare you, my viewers, of expecting to see news around St. Michael's Media and Church Militant, I am suspending all coverage. I will continue to report on Father Dallaire's defamation lawsuit against Michael Voris. Remember, Michael is the only one that has not issued an apology and agreed to a settlement with Father Dallaire. Moments before I was to go on the air the other day, someone close to the case advised me not to reveal the documents I were to discuss because it would be in violation of Rule 408 communication, which are communications marked privileged. That's why I was unable to bring it to you. But here's an update on the Father Dallaire's defamation lawsuit against Michael Voris. If you remember, I reported that Michael Voris at the end of February asked for another continuance. And at the time I went to air, I had not received a response. Well, the court response was filed on March 4th. And here is what it says. The plaintiff, Father George Dallaire, does not oppose the defendant, Michael Voris, further request to continue the trial date currently scheduled for April 15th, 2024. Father Dallaire asks to be heard on the scheduling of a new trial date, and that any conference scheduled to set a new date take place no sooner than next week, as his counsel have a status conference in Delaware this Friday, March 8th, which could impact their availability for a trial in this manner. So as you can see, the plaintiff is Reverend George Dallaire, and the defendants are Gary Michael Voris, Anita Carey, St. Michael's Media, aka Church Militant, and Mark Ballesteri. If you remember right, we went through this, that Anita Carey has offered an apology, which Father Dallaire accepted, and he did not press any kind of monetary judgment against Anita Carey. So she is now withdrawn from this lawsuit. St. Michael's Media Church Militant also offered an apology to Father Dallaire, and they settled with a $500,000 judgment that they need to pay to Father Dallaire. So they are out of the lawsuit. Mark Ballesteri has a defaultment judgment against him because he did not show up at a deposition hearing. So a monetary judgment amount I have not found has been filed against him, but it will probably be. So he has already, because he defaulted, he is already admitting that he's guilty because he didn't show up. He can, at some point, ask to appear, but that's highly unlikely that that's going to happen. So the only one left to settle or to move forward in the trial is Michael Voris. And to date, he has asked for a continuance, but he has not issued an apology or entered into any kind of a settlement agreement. So obviously, Michael Voris plans to continue with the trial at some later date, and don't know when that's going to be, but I'll keep my eye out to see what date was agreed upon. All right. Remember when I said that I had to believe that Father Dallaire reached out to Church Militant prior to the lawsuit to try to resolve this matter? Remember when I said that? Well, I was right. That's exactly what happened. And I obtained the letter that Howard Cooper, Father Delaire's attorney, sent to St. Michael's Media Church Militant. And I also have Michael Voris's response to Father Delaire. And I want to read both of these to you. And I have to tell you, they are very lengthy. So bear with me. Okay. Okay. As you see, this is addressed to Mr. Michael Voris and Miss Anita Carey. And it's from Father Delaire's attorney. Dear Mr. Voris and Miss Carey, please be informed that this office acts as counsel to the Very Reverend George Delaire. I write in connection with Father Delaire's claims against you, Church Militant, and St. Michael's Media, arising from articles and videos posted by you on your website, Church Militant. The articles at issue include, without limitation, the January 17, 2019 article titled NH, which is New Hampshire, Vicar changes dogma into heresy. The April 15th, 2019 video series titled Attacking the Good Guys, and the June 25th, 2019 article titled NH Diocese Violates Parishioners' Rights to Demolish Church. These publications, which target Father Delaire and his character following the Diocese of New Hampshire's issuance of certain precepts against the slaves of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, the St. Benedict Center, Inc. of Richmond, New Hampshire, and the Immaculate Heart of Mary School, St. Benedict Center, are highly inflammatory and are rife with outright falsehoods and inaccurate implications. It is clear that each of you choose to ignore and or failed to appropriately research even the most basic information concerning Father Delaire and his actions prior to publishing these statements. And everyone, this next statement is key. Moreover, you failed to ever reach out to Father Delaire for comment prior to the publication of your initial article in January of 2019. Had you done so, perhaps you would have received the basic facts surrounding Father Delaire prior to making the defamatory statements, which now open both of you and your companies up to significant liability. Because you are the author of the stories at issue, and Mr. Voris is also the registered agent of Church Militant, I'm writing to each of you directly to point out certain specific inaccuracies in what you wrote. Of course, it is likely that you were already aware of these inaccuracies, but it is important to have a record of these issues so that you understand the gravity of the situation if it cannot be resolved at this stage. I'm also copying the registered agent of St. Michael's Media, Inc., as it is also liable for each of your actions. As well as you are well aware, the St. Benedict Center in question, after losing a variety of court decisions in Manchester, decided to establish itself as a separate group from the one founded by Leonard Feeney, a priest accused of anti-Semitism and excommunicated from the Catholic Church in 1953. In 2016, the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith in Rome declared unacceptable, which means for these purposes and erroneous and contrary to church teachings, the manner with which Saint Benedict interrupted the church doctrinal principle, which means outside the church there is no salvation. Rome pronounced the matter closed, meaning it was no longer open to dialogue or debate. And I apologize, I meant to turn the page on this. There we go. All right, now you can follow along again. Sorry about that. Informed of the decision made by Rome, the Diocese of Manchester continued to work with the St. Benedict Center to pastorally accommodate the members by granting permission for a priest in good standing to offer ministry at the center. However, the St. Benedict Center leadership manipulated this gesture of goodwill to imply support by the Catholic Church. Therefore, on January 7, 2019, the diocese issued certain precepts which were consistent with the previous declarations issued by Rome, limiting the activities of the St. Benedict Center and their declarations of affiliations with the Catholic Church. Shortly after the issuance of these precepts, you published the January 17th, 2019 article at churchmilitant.com. To begin, the title of the January 2019 piece states that Father Dallaire changed dogma into heresy. The title of that piece alone is untrue and conveys a false impression to your several thousand readers. You were well aware that the decision by Rome and the precepts issued by the diocese were not about the St. Benedict Center's teachings of principle, but rather the manner in which they were and are interpreting that principle. Further and more specifically, you were fully aware that Father Dallaire did not accuse the St. Benedict Center of heresy for teaching a well-accepted Catholic doctrine, and yet you implied such with the title and contents of your January 17th, 2019 article. That article then proceeded to launch into a series of personal attacks against Father Dallaire, none of which are supported by revealed sources. For example, you wrote the following untrue statements, none of which are attributed to a verifiable source. Dallaire is said by current work colleagues to be emotionally unstable in this role as chief canonical judge of the diocese and counselor to these bishops. Church Militant has learned that there is much more than meets the eye to his fresh attack upon a group of devout lay Catholics. Let me turn the page. And by the way, Church Militant got all of this from Mark Ballesteri. He was the source of all of these attacks on Father Dallaire. Dallaire is said to be desperate to repair his image and save his chances as being promoted as bishop or an official of the Roman Curia, with incompetence in canonical matters also apparently well known and corroborated in the Roman Curia. Dallaire is nicknamed in those halls a troublemaker owing to his notorious botching of canonical cases involving clergy and other matters. Multiple independent sources in the Roman Curia say he has repeatedly botched diocese cases and embarrassed his bishop before the Roman congregations of the Curia. Church Militant has learned he is currently outsourcing work product that he as a canon lawyer is being paid well by the diocese to complete himself. He is said by priests and laity who currently work with him in the diocese to be vindictive and manipulative, who pines to be named a bishop or an official of the congregation for the doctrine of the faith. Additional questions are raised by his acquisitions. Church Militant has learned that Father Dallaire now frequently resides at an estate located near Manchester that he currently purchased, currently valued at $1.5 million. And folks, as we've reported before, Father Dallaire comes from a wealthy family. These statements range from utterly and provably false to implicitly untrue. For example, Father Dallaire has never outsourced his work as a canon lawyer at any time, and is simply not credible that anyone would have reported as much to you or to anyone else at Church Militant. Additionally, Father Dallaire has never botched a canonical or diocesan case involving clergy or other matters and has never been seen as incompetent. Accordingly, it is simply not credible that you or Church Militant has learned from any source that Father Dallaire has a nickname of troublemaker in the Roman Curia. Following several discussions, it is further not credible that any of Father Dallaire's current work colleagues have informed you or Church Militant that he is emotionally unstable, or that there is much more than meets the eye concerning the 2019 decision by the diocese related to the St. Benedict Center. Father Dallaire is not desperate to repair his image, as his image has had suffered no harm until your article was published. As example of knowingly false implications contained in the publication, you wrote in January 17, 2019 article that at least 3 complaints against Dallaire had been filed with the Holy See and made known to, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, Labosky. Together, they allege corruption, abuse of office, grave violations of the law, and incompetence as a canonist. However, if you or someone else at Church Militant somehow became aware of these confidential complaints, you surely were aware that all 3 were made by the same complainant in a single submission. And then let me turn the page for you. Almost done. The complainant is highly confidential in order to protect the complainant and related parties and could not have been disclosed to you or anyone else at Church Militant without violating that confidentiality. Since the only persons outside the Roman Curia who are bound by confidentiality, who have knowledge of the complaint, are persons with particular bias and one that is clearly oriented against Father Dallaire. It was not responsible journalism for you or your publication to accept this anonymous source at face value without conducting a further investigation. An investigation you did not conduct prior to the publishing the January 17th, 2019 article. And then it just goes on to cite another case. Further, the complaint was not credited by the Holy See or Bishop Labosky because the complainant was clearly biased and disgruntled over an unfavorable outcome. Once again, this is information that should have been available to you from the same source that disclosed the fact of the complaint, and yet you chose not to publish this balancing information. You further knowingly falsely implied that Father Dallaire engaged in improper financial dealings through the purchase of a home near Manchester. There is certainly no basis for your implication that Father Dallaire acquired property in a questionable manner. The severity of the impropriety that you implied is so extreme that it resulted in an immediate reaction amongst your readership. Father Dallaire received a threatening phone call referring to a statement you wrote about his home within an hour of the publication of your article. The harm suffered by Father Dallaire as a result of this false statement continues to this day. It further appears that this libelous attack was undertaken in order to garner support for St. Benedict Center, the group that was subject to certain precepts issued by the diocese on January 7, 2019, as well as prior censoring opinions by other Catholic authorities. Your reporting mischaracterized those precepts, and in doing so, you further engaged in libel against Father Dallaire by suggesting that he engaged in an attack against the members of this group when he did no such thing. In contrast, Father Dallaire has spent several months and in fact years working with the members of the St. Benedict Center to find areas of agreement and solutions to the disagreements between the group and the diocese. All of the statements made in the January 17, 2019 article were made without any attempt to meet with or speak with Father Dallaire, which further evidences your bias in investigating and reporting on these events. In the video published on April 15, 2019, of which a transcript is published on your website, you and or Church Militant made several false statements about Father Dallaire, all of which constitute libel and defamation, including but not limited to the following. Bullet point, you stated that daily mass isn't allowed to be offered anymore, when in fact Father Dallaire arranged for a priest to travel to a nearby parish to provide a weekend Latin mass to the members of St. Benedict Center. Bullet point, you stated that Father Dallaire is responsible for attacks against the group and that he began launching broadsides against the group shortly after being promoted to judicial vicar about 2 years ago. As you likely understood at the time of publication, as it was clear from the long history of the diocese dealing with the St. Benedict Center, Father Dallaire was simply the person who communicated the decision of the diocese. This information was readily available to anyone who had done even minimal research into the issue. Father Dallaire had been a fierce advocate for the members of the St. Benedict Center, has worked tirelessly to find some peaceful resolution to the tension and disagreement between the group, the diocese, and the church. Father Dallaire's efforts included several trips to Rome in an attempt to identify solutions. Additionally, Father Dallaire was promoted to vicar, judicial vicar, and vicar for canonical affairs in 2013, more than 5 years before the precepts were issued. It was in his capacity as vicar for canonical affairs and not as judicial vicar that he was involved with this dispute. Again, very basic investigation would have revealed these facts. Bullet point. You stated that it's clear that Dallaire wants the community to simply give up and move on, and he's making life very difficult for them in the meanwhile. When, as stated above, Father Dallaire has worked to accommodate the group to every extent possible, both before and after the precepts were issued. Once again, any modest investigation, which went beyond reliance on biased sources, would have revealed this information. Further, the video went on to repeat several of the same libelous and defamatory statements included in the January 17, 2019 article. Each of these false statements were likely designed to incite your readership to believe that Father Dallaire had acted with ill will against St. Benedict Center for the purpose of eliciting donations. Your website, where the transcript is posted, contained a link to the St. Benedict Center fundraising page, where the group was raising funds. The June 25th, 2019 article, authored by Ms. Carey, proceeded to parrot several of the above untrue statements, evidently without undertaking any independent investigation. This also constitutes libel and defamation to the same extent as the original misstatements. Remember, Anita Carey was told that all of this information had been vetted, substantiated, and it was good to go. So remember that. Although I have focused on some of the specific factual inaccuracies, it is worth pointing out that in their entirety, your publications portray Father Dallaire in a false and defamatory manner. It is, of course, your right to have a poor opinion of Father Dallaire and to disagree with him or his actions. It is also your right to express your negative personal views in your writings. However, what you cannot do and what the law does not allow is for you to report outright falsehoods and substantially untrue facts about the target of your attack in an effort to try and provide a basis for your negative personal opinions or to fundraise. And I'll turn to the next page. We're almost done. What you wrote about Father Dallaire purported to convey as fact numerous mistruths and distortions, all in a conscious effort to hold him up to public ridicule and scorn. This is libel. Despite your libelous and defamatory media campaign, Father Dallaire seeks here only an apology. Listen to this, folks. He only seeks an apology and a retraction from you, the contents from which he is willing to consider based upon what you yourself propose. Father Dallaire also seeks a commitment from you that publication of false defamatory statements will not be repeated. The apology and retraction must appear under your byline in position of equal prominence as the offending articles and videos. The offending article and videos must be deleted from your website along with their comments and any links to them contained to your website or any affiliated websites which you or your companies control. You must also enter into a written agreement expressing your commitment not to repeat the publication of the false and defamatory statements. It is my hope that despite what you wrote about him, you will agree that Father Dallaire is entitled to be portrayed accurately in the media, and that you will have the courage and integrity to apologize for your failure to report about him in an accurate manner. Please have your legal counsel, this is key, please have your legal counsel contact me by December 31st, 2019 concerning your position on this proposal. Please know that while it is Father Dallaire's hope to resolve this matter in this manner, he is willing to pursue his rights in a court of law and to seek all remedies that are available in that form. Father Dallaire reserves all rights. And that's signed by Howard Cooper, Father Dallaire's attorney. And all right, that is how it all started, everyone. How it all started. Now, I will say this. This is a pretty typical attorney letter. But what I want to point out in showing you this is that they wanted those articles and those videos to be pulled down. That's what they were asking for. Now I want to show you Michael's response, not St. Michael's Media's attorney's response, but Michael's response. So this was written on January 16th, 2020. So it was written after the December date that Father Dallaire had asked. So Father Dallaire asked the letter on December 26, 2019, and he asked for response by December 31st, 2019. Voris did not respond until 2 weeks after the date that the attorney had asked for. Dear Mr. Cooper, we received your letter dated December 26, 2019 on January 3rd, 2020. According to our email sent on January 6, 2020, the following is Church Militant's response. Regarding the articles and video reportage you referenced published on January 17th, 2019, April 15th, 2019, and June 25th, 2019, we strongly disagree with your reductionist and indeed defamatory characterization that any of the above set out to target Reverend Dallaire and his character with outright falsehoods and inaccurate implications, or that we have chosen to ignore and or failed to appropriately research even the most basic information concerning Reverend Dallaire and his actions prior to publishing the above. Such representation on your part are indeed gratuitous without any merit whatsoever. Moreover, an attorney of your experience is aware that statements are not actionable in defamation. And then he just goes on and cites in a paragraph a bunch of court cases. Moreover, Reverend Dallaire is a public figure representing the diocese, bishop and diocese of Manchester, and bears a heavy and often insurmountable burden of proving the reporting was done with actual malice. Then he cites another case. Whenever his personal conduct and decision-making is deliberately publicized and advertised by him or and let me change the page for you, or the diocese, the public, especially the faithful readership and viewership of Church Militant and St. Michael's Media, have a right to learn of such decision-making. Journalists such as we have a right to comment and opine about Reverend Dallaire's actions the moment he chooses to divulge them into the public forum, independently of any appointment having been set up prior to time to receive his approval for our public comment. You're suggesting that such consultation is required prior to the press reporting to the public upon Reverend Dallaire's conduct is farcical. Reverend Dallaire is a Roman Catholic priest who is held to a much higher standard as a representative of God and the Diocese of Manchester. Like the bishop whom he serves, he's responsible for his own conduct and those decisions that he makes both privately and publicly, which have impact the public. The days of faithful lay Catholics like us needing permission from ecclesiastical superiors prior to criticizing the inconsistencies of their persons or incongruent decisions are long gone. The blind faith that the faithful once placed in Roman Catholic clergy has been utterly destroyed thanks to the shameful clergy abuse scandals, sex scandals that continue to roil the Roman Catholic Church and the lay faithful who increasingly are asking themselves, how can we continue to trust these priests? Hence, the first greatest liability, Mr. Cooper, is with the clergy who have repeatedly, again and again and again, betrayed the trust that the faithful have placed in their superiors, not with members of the press who merely report the news and items of public interest that are brought to them by verified fonts and sources with access to the truth. Regarding your reference to Father Leonard Feeney, it's important to note that Father Feeney is dead. Injecting any ascriptions, anti-Semitism, or excommunication that had been made by some against a deceased individual, such as Father Feeney, to the instant discussion regarding our reporting on Father Dallaire is a red herring that is clearly immaterial to the issues you raise. However, since you mentioned them, you should know that the St. Benedict Center and its members, as is prominently advertised on the front page of its website, Catholicism.org, under the rubric Doctrinal Beliefs, subject all of their public asserted doctrines to the judgment of the Roman Catholic Church. More importantly, it would appear that your client, Reverend Dallaire, has ill-informed you. Your assertion of fact that Roman pronounced the matter closed is patently false. The 14 members of the St. Benedict Center have, to the contrary, all presented administrative appeals on an individual basis to the Vatican. As such, the matter is far from closed. 14 administrative appeals are still pending. What has your client told you or not told you exactly? Current events concerning the St. Benedict Center and its members remain of public interest among Catholic nationally and internationally. Reverend Dallaire's crude attempt through a lawyer's missive to intimidate and shut down our continued accurate reporting of the news is shameful on part of the clergyman. Page 3. There's 5 pages, folks. Regarding any other matter pertaining to the St. Benedict Center and its members, you are invited to seek comment from the members themselves prior to communicating false assertions of fact in writing to Church Militant, St. Michael's Media, and ourselves. As for your unsubstantiated and ridiculous claim that we have misrepresented to our readers and the public at large any conduct on the part of your client, you make yet again another demonstrably false charge by asserting in writing that Father Dallaire did not accuse the St. Benedict Center of heresy for teaching a well-accepted Catholic doctrine, and yet you implied such with the title and contents of your January 17th, 2019 article. That was a quote. Once more, what is your client, Reverend Dallaire, exactly telling you? I repeat this salient question because the third line of the updated precept entitled, quote, "Let it be known," close quote, issued by Reverend Dallaire states, quote, that those so corrected by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith have persisted in their obstinacy, and then he quoted Canon Law 750-751, unquote. Canon 751, Mr. Cooper, happens to be the canonical statute treating heresy. Reverend Dallaire's referencing of the canon concerning heresy with respect to the doctrine affirmed publicly by the members of the St. Benedict Center is to be imputed to him, not to us. Regarding any emotional condition of Reverend Dallaire, we merely reported impressions that were given to us based on multiple independent sources, namely individuals who have had direct dealings with him in his professional capacity. All sources who wish to remain anonymous out of fear of reprisal from Reverend Dallaire are deeply concerned about the vicar's emotional stability based upon his communications and decisions taken over the past years. All of the terms narrated in the bullet points you reference on page 3 of your aforesaid letter have indeed been reported to us by other canon lawyers, including one source, an official serving the Holy Father in the Vatican, who is quite familiar with Reverend Dallaire and his professional conduct on the part of the diocese and in interaction with the Holy See. For example, our reporting of the application of the Italian appellation incasinaro in application to Reverend Dallaire was expressed to us by an official currently serving in the Holy See. We at Church Militant and St. Michael's Media vetted the source and in turn reported the information we received from different sources to our readership. That is our right, and that is indeed our duty to the public regarding public figures. We don't have to make anything up. We don't make anything up against the implication, if not accusation, that you make in your letter. As for Reverend Dallaire's acquisition of a house valued at $1.5 million, we simply reported the marked contrast between Pope Francis having chosen to reside humbly in a hotel suite of 3 rooms instead of living in the sprawling apostolic palace of the Vatican City state, and Reverend Dallaire's lavish personal preference for an expensive home. We never implied any impropriety regarding mode or manner of acquisition. We remain deeply concerned, however, in an age where more and more prelates have been caught living lavish lifestyles at the expense of the faithful's donation. And then the example he used is Bishop Bransfield of Diocese of Wheeling. The disconnect between such lavish, and let me change the page, and such lavish living and the example set by Christ and Pope Francis, poverty and humility. But to be clear, we are not, nor do we ascribe any allegations of impropriety on the part of Reverend Dallaire in this regard. The article speaks for itself in this regard. However, he doesn't disclose that this was his family money. Voris doesn't admit to that. As for any threatening phone call received by Reverend Dallaire, we deeply regret that occurrence, but can hardly be held responsible for it. We did not disseminate any phone number assigned to Reverend Dallaire. As for his property address, that information was obtained from public record, which anyone has access to. Regarding the reference you make to complaints filed against Reverend Dallaire, we note that you do not deny any accusations denounced in said complaint. You employ the terms highly confidential, particular bias, and the fact that neither the Holy See nor Bishop Lebowski have credited the complaint is hardly a coherent argument for any complaint's alleged lack of foundation, since you yourself write that this said complaint is purportedly highly confidential. The Holy See has acknowledged globally the allegations made against former Cardinal McCarrick, and yet has still not and may never release any file or all complaints received by the Vatican over the years against McCarrick. Your client cannot invoke confidentiality of any alleged documents only to invoke opposite publicity concerning them as proof of any lack of credibility to be ascribed to said complaints. Regarding the video published on April 15, 2019, you are in error in stating that we have made several false statements about Father Dallaire. You referenced the fact that the Diocese of Manchester has prohibited the celebration of the Mass, and yet the Reverend Dallaire has arranged for a priest to travel to a nearby parish to provide a weekend Mass to the members of St. Benedict's Center. However, you fail very openly to mention that Mass and the Sacrament of Reconciliation was being offered by an approved chaplain every day of the week, not just on Sunday, and not away from the premises of St. Benedict's Center. So we can hardly be accused of committing, quote, libel and defamation, close quote, So we can hardly be accused of committing libel and defamation for reporting the full truth as opposed to the partial truth which you narrate as fact in your letter. As for Reverend Dallaire being a fierce advocate for the members of the St. Benedict Center based upon the information we have received from faithful within the Diocese of Manchester, coupled with the correspondence and precept released by the same diocese, we disagree. Your repeated false allegations that we have not conducted even a basic investigation by making reference to Reverend Dallaire's title of judicial vicar instead of Episcopal vicar is quite silly, given that your client holds both titles as one person. And your capacity of counsel for Reverend Dallaire does not suffice to make a false allegation of us not having evidently conducted any investigation, modest, basic, or other. On the one hand, you accuse us of not having conducted any research to support our reporting, but on the other, you yourself failed to contact Church Militant, St. Michael Media, or any of us to conduct due diligence prior to accusing us of failing in our journalistic obligation. One cannot critique others for that which oneself is responsible, Mr. Cooper. Well, everyone, the letter from Mr. Cooper is contacting Church Militant and St. Michael's Media. That's exactly what they were doing. Page 5. We thank you for concurring with our right to have a poor opinion of Father Dallaire and to disagree with him on his actions. The tenor of your letter at times gives the impression that anyone doing so would be in the wrong. However, you crossed the line entirely by asserting that we have reported outright falsehoods and substantially untrue facts about the Reverend Dallaire for supposed goals and reasons you fail to substantiate whatsoever, going so far as to imply that we acted improperly in an attempt to raise funds. Your false assertion of fact that we reported a number of public and demonstrably grave facts concerning Reverend Dallaire in a conscious effort to hold him up to public ridicule and scorn does not constitute libel because it was never our intent to hold him up to ridicule and scorn to begin with. I did not know Michael Voris had a law degree. Didn't know that, folks. Reverend Dallaire also falsely asserts that we never contacted him for comment about our reports. This is false. We emailed him in April 2019 specifically to request his response to our queries, and he wrote back offering no substance response. The overarching mission of Church Militant and all of the journalists and faithful who are employed by it is to report the news and information we receive concerning the Catholic Church and the clergy and the officials who are supposed to serve God and the faithful representing our church. Just because a judicial vicar or episcopal vicar or both does not like what we report, just because he may not like what fair opinion and analysis we offer to the public regarding a public figure, just because a cleric does not like what we hold him up to a higher standard and shed light on facts he may not prefer to have reported and divulged in the public domain does not mean that the press should stop fulfilling its mission of bringing the truth to the faithful who need to know who their leaders are and what they are really up to. Boy, if that isn't a telling statement to make to Father Dallaire, when that's exactly what has been going on with St. Michael's Media and Church Militant with all these scandals, right? Yeah. Look who's calling the kettle black. As for the requirements that you stipulated in your letter dated December 26, 2019, kindly know that Church Militant and St. Michael's Media is perfectly willing to publish additional documentation it has received from those private faithful who have suffered directly in their experiences with Reverend Dallaire, so that the faithful of the Diocese of Manchester, most of all, the Holy See, learn more information about Reverend Dallaire and how he has badly handled the members of St. Benedict's Center and other faithful of the diocese whose flock he has been appointed to shepherd in lieu of maltreating. The public has a right to know what Reverend Dallaire has done and is doing, and we have an obligation to report. Very truly yours, Michael Voris. Well, Michael, the public has a right to know what you did because you're a public figure. What did you do, Michael Voris? We have a right to know too. We have a right to know how you broke the morality clause. Those were 2 long letters, everyone, and I wish I could have shortened it for you, but I thought it was important to read each one all the way through. And this is why St. Michael's Media Church Militant got in trouble, because Michael Voris now thinks he's an attorney too. He's representing himself in the Dallaire lawsuit. He responded to an attorney. This should have been handled by an attorney. I don't care that they had 2 staff attorneys. They were not in the capacity to act as attorneys, Christine Niles and David Gordon. And I'm sure a lot of this was constructed and written by either one of those, and Michael put his final touches on it. But that was a response to a potential lawsuit that they were facing by a narcissist. Michael Voris thinks he knows more than everybody else, and that's been the crux of all of this. That's been the biggest problem. I know you all have questions around St. Michael's Media Church Militant. I will say this, in the Dallaire lawsuit, part of the agreement that was made by St. Michael's Media to Father Dallaire is that Church Militant will be shut down as of the end of April. Now, it's my understanding that there is no one working at Church Militant or St. Michael's Media now. They've all been laid off. If there's maybe the board of directors are still, doing things. I don't know. I don't know who the board of directors are anymore because they're not telling us. And again, no transparency, folks, in any of this. Still no transparency. So I cannot report any further on St. Michael's Media or Church Militant because I don't know what's going on. And with Joe not being able to come on tonight, he can't answer questions. If you noticed, his video that he put out on Wednesday was taken down. The next day, Thursday, it was taken down. St. Michael or Church Militant's website was offline. Then 24 hours later, it became online. No idea, ladies and gentlemen, what is going on. So the saga continues. And I wish I could tell you more than that, but I don't know any more than that. That I can say. So the key piece in my mind, the key piece to all of this is what is going to happen in this Dallaire lawsuit, and why is Michael not settling? Why is Michael not issuing an apology? The articles were all taken down about Father Dallaire. So why is Michael Voris holding out an apology? I know, but I can't say because I don't want to be in violation of Rule 408 on communication and the exchange that took place on the court documents marked it as privileged information. That's why I can't come forward. So I'm hoping that once the lawsuit is settled, I'll be able to bring more information to you on this. Or if it goes to trial, I'll let you know that as well. So I just wanted to make this quick video to update you on all the things that are going on. And I apologize that, the last video, 2 minutes before I went on air, I find this information out and couldn't tell you everything. And now this has happened with Joe Gallagher, and I don't know any more information to tell you about that. So That's why I'm suspending all coverage on St. Michael's Media and Church Militant, because I don't want to keep uh, doing this to you. Raising your expectations to learn more information, to have it pulled back. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, everybody needs to pray for all of this that's going on. Uh, and pray for Father Delaire too. Pray for Father Delaire. Pray for Michael Voris. Pray for Church Militant and St. Michael's Media, especially all of the employees that lost their jobs. And remember this, when I worked there were 65 people that were there. There was a major layoff after I resigned, which laid off a good chunk of people, about 30 people. There was another layoff in November, another layoff in December, and the final layoff just recently. So, they really need our prayers, because I'm sure they're all looking for jobs right now. Some of them have families, right? And I don't wish that on anybody, not on anybody. So let's keep everybody in our prayers. I hope that you're continuing to have a blessed Lent, and I'll keep you updated as more information about the Delaire lawsuit comes available. And I'm telling you all, that's the bigger story. The bigger story is Church Militant 501c4, Michael Voris, and this Delaire lawsuit. That's the biggest story. So I'm going to keep you updated on that. All right, everyone. Pray for me too. Would you do that? Pray for me. I don't always ask for prayers, but this saga has been really hard to deal with, and I appreciate all your support. So I'll be back in touch. I'm being interviewed on Tuesday with Dr. Christine Bacon. I am also bringing back Father Walter, that he's going to talk about evolution. That's coming up in March as well. David L. Gray will be back on. The Project Joseph will be on next week as well, next Tuesday, I believe it is. This is a project that helps men who have suffered the effects of abortion. We were supposed to have that a week ago, but schedules got all changed with Eric and David. Well, actually, David got sick. That's why that was postponed. David got sick. So they'll be back on to talk to you all about Project Joseph. And let's see, there's one other, I should have had this written out. There's one other story I'm bringing to you, and now it's just not coming to mind. But I've got some lineups for you coming that will be interesting and different. How about that? Interesting and different. So I look forward to you watching. And again, remember, eternal life is forever. Got a plan? Bye bye.